It is Monday, February 14th. Happy Valentine's Day. You are watching Right on Cue College Sports. Welcome back. Thanks for checking us out again. Here I am wearing my red. It's Happy Valentine's Day to all, and there is love in the air. We're going to talk about some college basketball teams that I really love right now as we're coming down the stretch of the college basketball season. Start things off talking about Colorado State and some of the statements that they made this weekend to really assert themselves as being one of the better teams coming out of the Mountain West and a real contender to do some damage in the NCAA tournament. Then we're going to take a look at some of the other storylines that took place on Saturday. A couple of different little tidbits I wanted to hit on. A couple of teams that are continuing to streak. A couple of teams that got upset. And then we're going to run through a little bit of a recap of some of the games that we talked about and previewed last week. After that, we're going to look at who are the front runners for each of the conference's Player of the Year contenders right now. Maybe take a look at a couple of dark horse Final Four potential teams, and then I'm going to give you guys a quick rundown of a few games that are going to be played tomorrow and on Wednesday that you're going to want to make sure that you watch because they're going to be incredible games. So let's go ahead and let's start things off with this game I went to with my wife on Friday, and I got to tell you something that's really awesome. That Northern Colorado community, Fort Collins community, they are really surrounding and supporting this Colorado State basketball program. I would love to get up to Laramie and see a game. I'm sure Southern Wyoming's doing the same thing for them. It's so cool because both of these teams are having potentially the best seasons in the history of their program. And they're doing it at the same time in real time. I was talking to my dad on the phone earlier today because we've been looking at trying to get tickets to go to the Wyoming Colorado State basketball game. It's been sold out for a week. It's almost impossible to find tickets at this point. But that very well could be a matchup between two ranked teams and nationally televised on ESPN. The only unfortunate thing is it's on a Wednesday, but they're going to have the stage, the national stage, with possibly two ranked teams in that game. That would be really, really cool for the area. But this game I'm talking about on Friday, this past Friday, Fresno State rolled into Colorado State, and they really dictated terms. The Bulldogs were running things pretty efficiently through their big man, Orlando Robinson. The first four baskets of the game for Fresno State, 3 layups by Orlando Robinson, and then kind of a mid-range jumper by him. He's a legit NBA talent. He goes about 6'11", maybe like 270, a big, strong guy, but he's got some touch from 3. He can make some moves in the paint or in the short elbow he's a real talented player. And it was all on display for him at the start of this game. Fresno State got exactly what they wanted getting this thing going. Robinson had 16 points at halftime. And CSU was out-rebounded 19-11 at the half. Fresno State up 3 points at halftime. It was really looking like Colorado State did not come to play. Orlando Robinson was doing whatever he wanted. And then the CSU Rams head coach Nico Medved, I don't know what he said, but he must have had a fire and brimstone halftime speech because the Rams came out a completely different team in the second half. James Moore, Deshaun Thomas, and David Roddy all got their chance to guard big Orlando Robinson in the second half, and they took him completely out of the game. That three-man rotation of defenders on him, keeping them fresh, keeping them healthy, out of foul trouble, it wore him down. They also went to kind of a zone defense. It was a little bit of an amoeba, 3 high, 2 low, to 2 high, 3 low, but they always kept 2 guys within arm's reach of Orlando Robinson. Super effective defense in the second half. And the only second half points I really remember seeing Orlando Robinson get were off of long 3-point shots with long rebounds, where he kind of just got the quick long rebound and tipped it back in. They really couldn't run anything through him, any offensive sets in the second half. Isaiah Stevens, the point guard for this Colorado State Rams team, was just flat out sensational. He is super duper fun to watch. His first step is as quick as almost anybody in the country. And what he does is he'll work that quick first step in the open court, get the defender on his back hip, and then slow it up. And he'll hold his defender on his back hip, and he'll basically play 2-on-1 with the center in the paint. So if the center comes to him, he'll look to pocket pass or maybe even lob for an alley-oop to Deshaun Thomas or David Roddy. But if the center plays back, then he'll just drop a little teardrop whoop, right up and in and get the 2 points himself. Super heady, super smart, and mature basketball he's playing right now. And he's combining that with an incredible skill set that he has. Super quick. He's a pretty good shooter, improving his shooting. That's going to be the key for him moving forward. He's got to be improving his shooting a little bit more. But he finished with 14 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. He's absolutely devastating off of the dribble. Mad props to Isaiah Thomas in this game and really in the last couple of games for the Colorado State Rams. And then, as is so often the case, we handed the ball to David Roddy and we said, close the door. And I have a new nickname. I'm dubbing him the Big Fundamental because you could just count on him. Niko Medved, to have a player like this where you can count on him to get you exactly what you want at exactly the right time. David Roddy is extremely creative in the post. He works the drop step very well. He's worked some fadeaway shots. He's very pinpoint with his passes in the paint, whether it be kind of a wraparound pass to the other post if two guys come to double him, or a quick kick out to a three. He can hit cutters from the post. I mean, he's a super smart, fundamentally sound basketball player. He also, there were 2 times I recall in my memory where he got the ball fed to him in the post, and he had big Orlando Robinson guarding him. Now, when he posts up, if he feels a smaller defender, he's going. He'll back him up. He'll put it up and in, and he won't even think about it. No wasted thought or memories about that. We're moving on. Okay, but when he got the ball in the post with a bigger man, Orlando Robinson, backs him once, feels the bigger guy. Then he does a bit of a drop pivot step back to carry his dribble across and faces up. I saw him twice in this game face up just like that. Everything in control. The big fundamental, man. Everything is within control for him. And then he gets a head of steam coming downhill, and he just straight up put Orlando Robinson in the spin cycle. He did a spin left, spin right, whoop, right up and in the hoop. The other time he probably did spin left, spin right, whoop, right up in the hoop. Totally under control the whole time. And the big man, Orlando Robinson, didn't have the footwork to stay with him. This team is playing very mature, smart, fundamental basketball. Roddy finished up with 21 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists. There was a point in the second half of this game where my cousin and I looked at each other, and we were both kind of like, this dude may have a chance to get a triple-double. Now, things kind of got away from him a little bit. Roddy came out for a period of time to catch his breath and stuff. I also have to hit on CSU's defense is playing tremendous. Like I mentioned, they came out the second half with that 3-headed monster rotation on defense on Orlando Robinson. They're making the right defensive calls at the right time. That's an indication that Niko Medved and his coaching staff are preparing well for these games. They're being able to adjust quickly. This is a team who has always pretty much been very efficient on offense. Their defensive efficiency is quickly catching up to that as they come down the stretch here. I think CSU is looking very, very strong as we come down the line towards the end of the season here. But this big win that we were at, Fresno State at Moby, then set the stage for a monster clash that was the preview of the Super Bowl, basically, when the Rams traveled to Boise State. Colorado State ended up pulling out the win in overtime, 77-74 over Boise State. Boise State was leading the conference. Boise State has the best defense in the conference. And Isaiah Stevens just went out, put up 14 and 5 assists. David Roddy, 18 and 7 points. Remember, I said, on the best defense in the conference. Didn't seem to matter to them. They went right at the Broncos. This was an impressive statement win for Colorado State. Deshaun Thomas was a little bit flat. He is still young, got incredible talent and potential. Still young, so his talent doesn't quite travel when they go on the road. But the Rams have found a new spark in James Moores and the guard Chandler Jones. I mean, oh my gosh. He was averaging just 5 points per game coming in, poured in 16 points off the bench. This Ram squad is diverse. They're growing more and more diverse every game. They're playing, again, like I said, very mature, wise, and calculating basketball. They're playing fun basketball. They're playing for each other. It's a team effort. This Mountain West Conference is looking like it's going to come down to Wyoming and Colorado State. Boise State better be careful. they could mess around and find themselves on the bubble looking out if they don't get things together here down the stretch for the NCAA tournament. Meanwhile, Colorado State, 20-3 now on the year. The Rams continue their road stretch at New Mexico and then at UNLV this week. They then, like I mentioned, host Wyoming next Wednesday before finishing the season at Utah State and then hosting Boise State that next week. So a lot of fun basketball going on in the Mountain West right now. If you are in this area, it is worth your while to get a ticket, go and enjoy some fun basketball. The other big game that happened on Friday was number 24 UConn travel to number 25 Xavier. I gave you Xavier by 3 in this one. They're two very similarly styled and talented teams, and so it was really kind of a push for the Vegas odds. Xavier gets the win 74-68 at home. Jack Nunge had 22 points and 9 rebounds, a pretty impressive outing as Xavier snapped their 2-game losing streak. These are two teams that will make the tournament. I've been watching a little bit of Big East basketball at this point now, and I think there are 3 teams that are impressive out of the Big East, and that's Villanova, Marquette, and Providence. These two, I think, are a considerable notch below. Although you're starting to hear people talk about UConn maybe being a team that could make a surprise run in the tournament. I don't really buy it. RJ Cole is their best player by quite a bit, in my opinion, and he doesn't get the production and help he needs from their big guys like Adama Sanogo in the games that he needs them. So it'll be sort of interesting to see how these two teams are able to compete in the NCAA tournament. But I don't really have a ton more to talk about these two teams. That was the other big game on Friday. Now, with a mindset towards Saturday, a couple of little items I want to talk about here, and then we'll take a look at the games we previewed. First of all, something I thought was really cool. College Game Day, Saturday morning, actually covered a little bit about the Wyoming Cowboys. And Jay Billis, and I quote, said that the Wyoming Cowboys, they're going to be a tough out in the tourney. Okay, so he's thinking this Wyoming Cowboys squad might be a team that could make a surprise Sweet 16, maybe surprise Elite 8 run. And I got to tell you, with the way Hunter Maldonado is so efficient in the backcourt, and you have a tremendous upside talent of Graham Ike in the front court, I think, if Jeffries and some of these other guys can be shooting threes effectively, I don't see why they couldn't make a little bit of a run, to be honest with you. But Wyoming took care of business on Saturday. They got the 74-52 win over San Jose State. Graham Ike went for 25 and 18 on 50% shooting, which is phenomenal. But for him, that's what he does. I mean, this dude is just an incredible talent. As of this morning, the Cowboys are now number 22 in the country in the most recent AP Top 25. And Colorado State Rams are only 2 spots out of the top 25 receiving votes. Super fun time to be watching Mountain West Conference basketball. The Wyoming Cowboys are 21-3. They play at New Mexico tomorrow if you want to get a chance to watch some of these players on display. That one, obviously, against my alma mater, New Mexico, should not be close. Wyoming is probably favored by 8 or 9 in that one. They can't afford to drop this. They're on too much of a roll. Another little tidbit I want to hit on here, North Carolina, who's a legit bubble team. Okay, they are not in the tournament by any stretch of the imagination. They are fighting to get into the tournament. And an underwhelming season so far for North Carolina. They just straight up blew out Florida State over the weekend, keeping their tournament hopes alive and basically hammering the final nail in the coffin for Leonard Hamilton's bunch. This Florida State squad has like 5 7-footers on their team, and for whatever reason, they've been out-rebounded like 5 of the last 6 games. They're just soft. They've had injuries. I'm not entirely sure what has happened with this Florida State squad, but if you're a Florida State fan, this was a real letdown of a year. But then let's move on to the next little tidbit. The Rutgers Scarlet Knights do it again. This was the first one, though, on the road. They go and they beat Wisconsin in a massive upset. The backcourt was super impressive. Ron Harper Jr., Paul Mulcahy, and Geo Baker they all scored 16-plus points. The Knights were almost 60% from the 3-point line. And somehow, on defense, they held probably the leading contender for Big Ten Player of the Year, Johnny Davis, to just 11 points. Rutgers, who has 9 losses on the year, okay? They were probably bubble out 3 weeks ago. They now have wins over Purdue, Ohio State, Michigan State, and now Wisconsin. This team is the Purdue football of this basketball season, just knocking off big time teams. The next quick thing I want to hit on, though, the Houston Cougars. Look at these records, okay? Houston had not lost back-to-back games since 2017. Houston had not lost a home game in 37 games. And those are all, of course, credit to Kelvin Sampson and the program he's built there. Well, those streaks came to a screeching halt this last weekend as Memphis went into Houston and beat them pretty handily, pretty much from start to finish, 69-59. Landers Nolly for Memphis was phenomenal, and the 6'11 freshman center Jalen Duren, he was fantastic as well. There's tremendous talent on this Memphis squad. Like I mentioned about Florida State, Memphis has really been kind of a letdown this year. Penny Hardaway, the head coach for Memphis, has had some run-ins with the media and stuff. There's been a lot of hurt feelings. It's been a tough year for Memphis, but they're for sure on the bubble, and their tournament hopes are still alive after this win, more alive than they were before after this win over Houston. As for Houston, they've now lost 2 games in a row, and I was talking with my buddy Alex about this. They lost these 2 games in completely different fashions. When they lost to SMU, that game was in the 80s. They just flat out couldn't stop SMU on defense. This game was a much lower scoring game. The defense played pretty well, but they couldn't score. They couldn't string together scoring opportunities. They couldn't get out on the fast break. So your defense lets you down one game, your offense the other. That's not what you want to see if you're a coach. You'd like to be able to isolate a problem and be able to correct it. But if the problem is now 2 completely different things, it can make it a little bit of a difficult adjustment now. And Houston plays some tough teams down the stretch here in the American Conference. They've got Wichita State. They still have Cincinnati. I think they have another one against SMU, probably at home. Things are not going to get super easy now for Houston. Now let's dive into the games that we previewed last weekend and see how we did. First, that big game, Texas rolling into Baylor. Texas was white hot fire coming into this game. They had just beaten 4 ranked teams in a row. They were looking really, really good. They seemed like they had finally figured out the offense. Meanwhile, for Baylor, LJ Cryer was out again. Everyday Jonathan Chamwa-Chachua, their big man, who was a huge part of their national championship team last year, he gets injured about 2 minutes in, and now we know he's out for the season. But from that moment on, the team just rallied. They rallied on this emotional high of watching their teammate go out of the game. As the fans started getting involved, we started seeing Texas make mistakes. We saw the same Timmy Allen we've seen pretty much all year until very recently, where he was turning the ball over, missing easy shots, was not effective on the offense. And the Longhorns started, creating cheap fouls, causing cheap fouls. And that just allowed Baylor to just edge away. The freshman duo, Kendall Brown and Jeremy Sohan for Baylor, they really brought the energy and production with Jonathan Chamwa-Chachua going out. A little bit early on in the second half, some fantastic three-point shooting from Andrew Jones at Texas. He really tried to pull the team back into the game, but Baylor was just too much late. Flo Thamba ended up with a double-double, 12 and 11, and James Akinjo had probably his most effective game in the backcourt, 15.7 assists. But again, this has been kind of a developing thing. What in the wild world of sports is James Akinjo doing? He was 0 for 4 from the three-point line. So there's always one part of his game that's just terribly inefficient or effective. At least it wasn't turnovers this game. Baylor now travels to number 9 Texas Tech this Wednesday. That is going to be a massive game. Meanwhile, Texas gets the Red Raiders at home on Saturday. Then we saw Texas A&M roll into the jungle to take on the number 1 team in the country, Auburn, who had just lost their last game and now we know have fallen from number 1 to number 2 in the polls. This was a sluggish start for both teams, really. I think we've identified a weakness in Auburn is when they face a team that's excellent from the three-point line. Not only if that team's making the threes, but maybe more especially if they're missing them, because it's long, clanging rebounds. And so you have these two massive juggernauts under the hoop in Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler. But if the rebounds are coming long, then height doesn't really matter. It's all about being quick and in the right spot. A&M's Henry Coleman had 10 rebounds in just the first 12 minutes of the game. 6 of his rebounds were offensive, extending possessions. That was pretty shocking to watch early on in this game. Other teams might watch that and try and capitalize on it. Although the Aggies extended possessions, though, they just couldn't score in the first half. They only ended up with 18 points in the first half. Meanwhile, in this game, Walker Kessler finished with a triple-double, 12 points, 11 rebounds, and 12 blocked shots. Wow, you don't often see the blocked shot triple-double. Alan Flanagan in the backcourt for Auburn played well, 16 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. But the rest of the backcourt for Auburn was pretty flat and quiet. Again, this is now multiple games that they've been pretty quiet. The combo of Katie Johnson, Wendell Moore. After starting 15-2, A&M has now lost 8 games in a row. They've basically gone from being a solid, probably a 5 seed in the tournament, to now they're officially out of the tournament. They are now 15-10 on the season, and they still have a hell of a schedule left to play. The fun, under-the-radar game I mentioned to you last week was number 23 Murray State traveling to Morehead State, a battle of the top 2 teams in the Ohio Valley Conference. And if you got a chance to watch this one, it was pretty fun. Pretty fun. You just have to get beyond the fact that it looks like they're playing in a high school gym. But these were fun, high-paced teams playing very good defense. Murray State pulls out the win 57-53. Now, kind of similar to the Colorado State game, Morehead State set the tone early. The freshman Janai Broom was the real deal. He got his 19th double-double of the season, 14 points, 12 rebounds. Murray was down 9 points with just 7 minutes left in the second half when their big man, KJ Williams, got his 4th foul. And he was the only one who was kind of holding Janai Broom within check whatsoever. For the next 2 minutes, though, they found a way with 4 guards out there. They stretched the court, and they were able to maintain contact with Morehead State. Then they make the decision to bring KJ Williams back into the game, let him play the last 5 minutes of the game with 4 fouls. One more, and he's out for the game. And he was able to play it. Last 5 minutes of the game, KJ Williams played very mature basketball. He was very heady. He kept himself out of bad spots that he might get a foul in. Didn't try and draw any charges. He was just collecting rebounds, creating offense without forcing it. He was really impressive down the stretch. And then Tevin Brown was big down the stretch as well. They were so Murray State, though, was only 3 of 19 from three-pointers in this game. That's been kind of how they've been beating teams, is shooting really well from the 3. So it was an off-shooting night for Murray, but the fact that they found another way to win, I thought was pretty impressive. One thing to keep in mind, especially if you are on the bubble, if your team is on the bubble, okay? Murray is probably in no matter what. So this could be a potential bid-stealing conference, because they're not going to get 2 unless somebody other than Murray State wins the conference tournament. So if Morehead or Belmont end up winning the conference tournament, you're going to see 2 Ohio Valley teams in the NCAA tournament, which means 1 less spot for the Pac-12, the Mountain West, etc. So if you're Oregon, if you're Boise, maybe San Diego State, you are hoping that Murray State wins their conference tournament. The next game that we highlighted last week was number 22 St. Mary's, 20-6, traveled on the road to Gonzaga. We did a little thought exercise to see if they had a chance in this game. We kind of determined that they didn't. I gave you Gonzaga by 18. They ended up winning by 16, so pretty good pick there. Gonzaga wins 74-58. One of the things we talked about is Gonzaga scores 91 points per game. So the Gales are going to have to find a way to hold them to below their average scoring. Well, they held them at just 74. So the Gales were effective at that, but they just did not have the offense to stay with them. Matthias Tass finished with 14, Alex Dukas 12 points, and Tommy Kusi at 16. That's like good offense out of the Gales. They don't have a ton of offensive production and explosion. But the 2 areas that they needed to win that we highlighted last week, They shot just 29% from the three-point line. That's not going to cut it. And Gonzaga shot 50% from the three-point line. That's a huge margin difference. Also, the Gales got out-rebounded by 10. St. Mary's had only 2 offensive rebounds in the game. Only 2. Gonzaga is a dang good team. As for Gonzaga, they showed that they can win defensively. This whole season, they've been just blowing teams out, winning offensively. In this game, they faced a little adversity on offense, and they showed, you know what? We could slam the door on defense and win without having to score a ton of points. Drew Timme, Chet Holmgren, and Andrew Nembhard were the show. They scored 52 of the team's 74 points. They collected 29 of the team's 37 points. But the sophomore guard, Julian Strother, he's turning into a kind of a key piece. He shot well in this game. From 3, he was 3 for 5. Those were big shots at big moments in the game. The Zags now have 2 cupcakes this week before they finish up on the road at San Francisco, and then they face on the road this St. Mary's bunch. So it's not an easy walk for Gonzaga, but they're just that dominant. I don't see them losing another game. The next game that we talked about, the last game of the night on Saturday, was number 12 UCLA traveling to USC. We told you you're going to want to watch this one because USC was better than previously thought, and sure enough, USC pulls off the win at home, 67-64 in a fun rivalry game. Jaime Jaquez went out of this game in like the first 2 minutes with some kind of chronic issue. We never saw him again. That proved to just be too much of a hole for UCLA to overcome. This game was a true back and forth battle the whole way. USC led by 2 points at halftime. UCLA had the ball with 18 seconds left in the second half and a chance to hit a 3 to go to overtime, but Tiger Campbell turned the ball over, and USC locked in and got the win. The Trojans, I think, have discovered a key to beating the Bruins at this point, and that's to force Tiger Campbell to beat you. Tiger Campbell was the leading scorer for the Bruins. That very rarely happens. UCLA pretty much never loses when Jules Bernard, Johnny Juzang are the leading scorer, or Jaime Jaquez. But when Tiger Campbell, or if you force Cody Riley to beat you, it's not successful. It's not a successful strategy for the Bruins. So I think you're going to start to see teams defensively try and create that situation. And even early on, you can't get discouraged because Tiger Campbell's going to make shots. He's a hell of a player. But if he's making a couple shots, he's going to become confident, and that's where you want him to be, because then he'll miss 2 or 3 in a row and keep shooting instead of missing a couple and going, all right, I'm going to orchestrate and pass. So USC found a new element that I think could be important moving forward. Also, the guard Drew Peterson. Boy, after Kirk Ariza dominated him in their game against Arizona, Drew Peterson reminded everybody, hey, I'm a hell of a player myself. He had 27 points, 12 rebounds, and 4 assists in this game. He went for 4 for 5 from the three-point line. I think if USC can get guard play like this, they're going to be a tough team to get out in the NCAA tournament. They could make another, remember last year they made that run to the Elite Eight. You could maybe see USC surprise people if they can get some backcourt play like this, because they have great front court play with Chavez Goodwin and Mobley, Isaiah Mobley. But okay, let's take a look at how my picks did this week. I went 4 for 2 on the weekend. My only 2 losses, obviously Houston losing at home. Nobody predicted that. And then UCLA, I gave you in a slight win over USC. I should have gone with my gut and picked USC. We are now 23-9 on the year. That is 72%. So let's quickly run through. Here's our front runners for Player of the Year in each of the major conferences. In the American Conference, SMU's senior Kendrick Davis, he goes for 20 points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists per game. SMU, he was great in that win over Houston just the other day. Kyler Edwards has been impressive for Houston, but I think Kendrick Davis has got to be the front runner for the Mustangs right now. Out of the ACC, a team you haven't heard many people talking about, Wake Forest, Alondis Williams, the senior. He goes for 20 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. Wake Forest 19-5. They have a big matchup against Duke coming up this week. Paolo Banchero is probably second in that conference. Out of the Big East, I mentioned R.J. Cole out of UConn. And then pretty close probably on his heels is the freshman Justin Lewis out of Marquette. He goes for 17, 8, and 2. RJ Cole, 16, 4, and 5. Out of the Big 12, Ochai Agbaji is running away with it. 20 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists for the 19 and 4 Kansas Jayhawks. That one's not a super competitive. If I had to pick somebody else, maybe Bryson Williams from Texas Tech. Out of the Big 10, I mentioned Johnny Davis, but he's really starting to fizzle down the stretch here. He goes for 21, 8, and 3, but right on his heels is Kofi Coburn out of Illinois. 22 points, 11 rebounds, and an assist per game. Now the fun one, out of the Mountain West. I think you got 3 real contenders. Number 1, the leader in the clubhouse is Graham Ike, 20 points, 9 rebounds per game. David Roddy from Colorado State going 19 points, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists per game. And then the big man from Fresno State, Orlando Robinson, is in the hunt as well. As for the Pac-12, I think Terrell Brown Jr. out of Washington has been the biggest revelation this year. It's just too bad that he doesn't have enough other production around him. They play a good style of defense. If he had somebody else around him who could score 15, 16 points a game or who could collect a couple more rebounds, this Washington team could probably go to the NCAA tournament. But as it stands right now, Terrell Brown, 22 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. Probably Benedict Mathurin from Arizona and Johnny Juzang are in the hunt as well from UCLA. Out of the SEC, I think you guys all know for a while now, I have been really high on Oscar Tshiebwe, the junior center out of Kentucky. He is averaging 16 points, 15 rebounds. Still on pace to set the all-time NCAA rebounds per game record. That's right, Oscar Tshiebwe out of Kentucky. Making late surge, J.D. Notae from Arkansas, and then also the freshman Jabari Smith from Auburn are probably in contention as well. And let's just go ahead right now. If I had to pick my final 4 teams as of right now, I would say here's a couple things to keep in mind. 6 teams seeded 7 or lower have made the Final Four since 2012. 5 double-digit seeds have made it since 2006. Only one time in the last 20 years have all 4 of the 1 seeds made it. But a number 1 seed has made it every year for the last 8 years. So when you're making your bracket, keep in mind you've got to put at least 1 seed in there. I think it's likely to be Gonzaga. Then I've got a 2 seed at Kentucky. I've got number 4. I think Houston is going to find a way to bounce back. A team that I might switch there, I've kind of got 4 teams that I would rotate in this bottom spot. I would say Houston, Alabama, Texas Tech, USC in kind of the 3, 4, 5, 6 seed range. And now let's take a quick look at 3 games coming up that have massive importance in the college basketball landscape. The first being at 6 p.m. tomorrow on CBS Sports Network. Number 10, Villanova travels to number 8, Providence. Followed at 7 on ESPN tomorrow night. Number 4, Kentucky travels to number 16, Tennessee. And then on a one big game, big night on Wednesday, I mentioned number 7, Baylor goes to number 11, Texas Tech. So the fun basketball games just continue. I appreciate you guys checking in with us. Feel free to let us know what you think about our content. And thanks again for watching Right on Cue College Sports. We'll get at you next time.